My name is Akiva Wharton. Some have called me Akiva the Believer, which I sort of like. I am born in Huntington, Long Island, New York. And there was a third.
And where you live now?
And I live in Huntington, Long Island, New York. I've moved about 12 blocks onto the beach. I live on the water. I think it was when my father died 4 years after my sister died, on her birthday. He couldn't go through another birthday of his daughter without her. I didn't have a father, but I had a father. Od Avinu Chai, the Father lives. There is a faith which comes as a child because they teach it to you, but there's a man with a beard and a scepter or something like that. And you outgrow that and it becomes meaningless. And then something happens in your life and your heart breaks open, it's shattered. And because it's broken open, it's available. And then you find that there is a living God in the universe. I found that there was a living God in the universe on whom I could rely. But the heart had to break open for me to feel that.
What do you remember of that time when your father died?
I remember that I was now the father. I was the man of the house, and I wasn't really ready for that. My mother leaned on me. That felt very strange. I didn't have a sister anymore. Didn't have a father. So I was, what do they say? Faking it till you make it. But right next to me was Hashem. And I remember that feeling of not being completely alone. I have a very active conversation with God all the time. I write prayers, I write songs, and I'm always asking, what do you want from me? You gave me some talent. What do you want? And I get the same answer over and over and over again. I want new prayers. I want better prayers. And when I get lost into thinking, I need money, I need gigs, I need, a CD, I need prayers. I need updates. You humans are still doing opera, you're still doing folky music, you're doing Gregorian chant music. I need updates. I need new prayers that will work for my people now. And sometimes as I'm in the middle of davening with people around me, I go, is this what you had in mind? And sometimes I get, yes, thank you, this is what I had in mind. Keep going. It's always about this conversation that I have. Every night I check in, every morning I check. We're supposed to pray 3 times a day. And I often do it in the afternoon also. And the trick is to ask the question and then shut up and see what comes, The inner voice, is it my inner voice or is it that other voice that I heard in Israel, coming back to nudge me a little. I come from German and Austrian parents who did not really believe in the divine. And I had no formal Jewish or religious education. The search was my own, really. I feel closest to Avram Avinu, who also had to find his own way. When I was about 22, my sister, Alav Hashalom, killed herself, committed suicide. And that rocked my world, as you might expect. And my father, who had never said a Jewish teaching in his life, said, "It's time for you to visit Israel. I have enough with America. Let's see what they have for you." For me, visiting Israel was like visiting Switzerland or Japan. I had no Jewish education, so I wasn't headed to the Holy Land. I was headed to a place that my father thought I should visit. And when I got there, I of course was in grief over my sister. And I was walking in the Jezreel Valley one day, all alone. I wasn't particularly sad. And I suddenly heard a voice which said, "I am here." I turned around and there was no one saying anything. And then that voice said, "I'm really here. I exist." And my whole life changed. I could have said this was a grief flashback or some sort of, not enough sleep. Avram Heschel says most people have moments like this in their life and they usually explain them away. I chose to say that this was God speaking to me, trying to wake me up. And that was my first moment of faith, that there was something outside of me, a living God, that had nothing to do with all the stuff I'd read in books, but it was addressing itself to me, and my whole world was new.
So what happened?
So I went looking for his emissaries, his salesmen. I went to synagogues, and I was underwhelmed, I thought that wasn't like what that voice was, because the voice had juice and had authority and had reality. And I found metaphor and boredom and political hypocrisy and all sorts of weirdness in those places. When I was in Israel, I was on a kibbutz for a while, and Friday night they put out 2 candles, a little challah, a little cup. I realize now they were saying Kiddush, it was not a service of any sort, but to me, I was in Mea Sharim. I was like with the Orthodox suddenly, because from my background, I was suddenly Shabbos. It was like a whole new world. I didn't know. I thought this was the most religious thing you could do, was spend 5 minutes before meals in a little something. And I remembered that after I was unhappy with the synagogues, and I said, okay, I'll recreate some of that. And I knew that there was something with a thing they put over the head. I didn't have any talis at that point. I had a blanket. I put a blanket over my head. I didn't realize that was for Saturday morning, not for Friday night. Was it 1? Was it 2 candles? I wasn't sure. I thought it was 1 candle. I lit 1 candle. I did everything wrong you could possibly imagine, except that I was connecting. And it was very authentic. It was completely private. I even made up a little song that I would sing to myself. And I began to experience what Avram Avinu must have found was when you're the first, because it wasn't like I was learning from anybody. It wasn't like I was reclaiming something. I was literally stepping out into the unknown. And all I had was that voice, that memory of that voice. Religion, I think the word means to relive, to reconnect. So I was trying to reconnect with that. And it was working for me. Then I would go back into the synagogue, and it wasn't working so well, but I learned stuff there. I learned it was a white thing you put over the head, and it was on a Saturday morning, it was 2 candles. And I started sort of vibrating back and forth between my own world and the world of Yiddishkeit, Reform, Conservative. I sampled them all. And I learned from everybody, and I'm grateful. They were wonderful teachers. And my faith got deeper, you know. I heard all sorts of wonderful teachings, miracles, met wonderful people. And I was drawn fairly quickly to the world of orthodoxy, because everybody else seemed to always be looking over their shoulder. We do it like this, they do it like that, but we do it like this. They do it like... And I realized, well, the Orthodox aren't saying the Reform do it like that, but we do it like this. They just said we do it like this. This is the right way. And that impressed me, that they had that confidence that they had it right from Mount Sinai. Later I realized there's this kind of orthodoxy, this kind of... They were all looking at each other just the same way. I actually did have an experience around this time that was wonderful, which was that I was the backup band for Shlomo Carlebach for one night. I had been a kind of tambourine and darbuka, dumbek player, doing dance classes, rock bands, and so on. And, you know, it was okay. I loved the instrument. I wanted to work on the tambourine. People said, you got to meet Shlomo Carlebach. I said, what's Shlomo? He said, just come, bring your stuff, bring your tambourine. He's doing a concert in Dayton. I was going to school in Yellow Springs. I came to Dayton, 7 o'clock, 7:15, 7:30. There's no Shlomo. 7:45, there's no Shlomo. 8 o'clock, very late he comes. Now that he's dead, we call him the late Shlomo Carlebach. But then he was just the late Shlomo Carlebach. So I thought, it's not a good start. Then instead of going to the front, he goes to the back of the auditorium and he begins shaking everybody's hands. And I literally mean everybody's hands, row by row by row, tripping over purses and pocketbooks and everything else. I thought, this is something I've never seen. But I kind of liked it. He comes to me, and I have hidden my things under my seat. And I don't know how he had an antenna. He said, what's under the seat? I said, it's nothing. My friend says, no, it's not nothing. This kid can really play. He says, up on the stage. I mean, there was no moment, there was no like, can you play well? Can you keep a beat? Do you know Jewish music? Do you know mine? None of that stuff. There's no artist in the world who would ever say, up on the stage, just from this short little introduction. And that, you know, that's Shlomo Carlebach. Because he knew that my playing with him that night would change my life. And he took the risk that I wouldn't completely ruin his concert. I mean, it was a big concert. So I was his backup band for that night. And all I can tell you was, I thought we made a pretty good pair, you know? I thought I really helped the guy. Only later I realized everybody had the same experience. Everybody was like transported. There was 1,000 people there, and they all thought he was talking to them. And I remember he started up on the stage, people were in the audience, and at the end he was down on the floor in front of the stage, and the audience was gathered around him. He was invisible. They were all clotted around him, wanting to get whatever he had emanating off of him. And I didn't really get 9/10 of what he was talking about, because it was in that strange language that I didn't learn as a kid, but I knew it was something. And later, they asked me to do the blessing over the Torah for my niece at her bat mitzvah. So I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I better learn a little more about this stuff. And I was looking through the books, and I found Holy Brother, the life, chanted tales or some such thing of Shlomo Carlebach. I now know the author. It's a wonderful, wonderful woman. Yeah. And I read his life and his teachings, and I thought, this is my Rebbe. He had been dead a few years but by this time. But I remembered that one night, and these teachings and the whole thing clicked. And I said, this is what I didn't find in the synagogues. This is what I was looking for. And that was my second moment of faith. Because when you meet, actually brings tears to my eyes. When you meet your Rebbe, as Shlomo would say, he connects your soul to the soul of the divine. And that's what happened. When I read those stories, it was like I was reading a path, that I could walk on that path. And I knew I would find my way, but I knew that he had kind of shown a way of love, of deep teaching, of deep wisdom, of study. He was an absolutely brilliant student and scholar, and yet he used all of that with music. And when he left where he was learning, and they had sort of planned for him to be the scholar of his generation, because he wasn't a Louis, he was a genius, and he was supposed to write Sforim, holy books. And as he walked away, the myth, I think it's a true story, is that his teacher, Aaron Kotler, who was the Rosh Hashiva of Lakewood, where he studied, he said, there goes a whole shelf of books that won't get written because of his choices. There's water flowing under every shoe, water flowing under me, flowing under you. This water is given high above. This water is God's great love. Everybody sinks a well deep, deep down. Everybody builds a well right here on God's ground. And even though no two wells are ever built the same, every single well is built one of God's name. Water flowing under every shoe, water flowing under me, flowing under you. This water is given from high above. This water is God's great love. Every well looks different, it carries a different name. Every well is built to last, to even outlast fame. Some wells are like beacons, some wells are like guns. But the water that they tap, that's for everyone. Water flowing under every shoe. Water flowing under me, and it's flowing under you. This water is given from high, high above. This water is God's great love. So if you chance upon a well, it's different or it's changed. A well that makes you turn away, or a well that makes you cringe. Stop right there. Stare down at your shoe. There's water flowing under them. Water just for you. Water flowing under every shoe. Water flowing under me, flowing under you. This water is given from high, high above. This water is God's great love.